Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Shad Fer, and we're in for quite the treat today. We have a special event that's being organized by ORG. ORG is the Organization for Responsible Governance because knowing who to vote for and knowing how to vote is important. And it doesn't matter what your choice is, all that matters is that you make educated choices. And so all you got to do is go to orgbahamas.com/vote and you could see information that could help you to make the right decision because that change is in your hands. Now, today, when I say we got something special, I really mean it because a lot of us want to make changes in the Bahamas. A lot of us see the changes, and a lot of us have opinions about how those changes could be made. And some of us are older than others, and some of us are younger than others. But today, we have some of the brightest minds here of our youth sector that are able to give their opinions and answer some well-needed and thought-provoking questions on the state of the country and on voter knowledge. So let's see, who do we got here?
So I'll start. I'm Kenrick Stubbs. For work, I'm in engineering, water resources specifically. And I wear a few other hats, but to name a few, I also serve as a soccer referee and a drone pilot on occasion.
Okay. My name is Trei Bethel. I'm an entrepreneur, business development and marketing specialist, along with being a youth senator as well too, and which is my background and platform. So I focus more so on youth development as well as advocate for those young people in the Bahamas itself who are marginalized, abandoned, or also orphan individuals.
And I am Tezel Lightbourne. I am a public health professional. And so I founded Regal State of Health Consultancy, which is a boutique consulting firm to focus on Caribbean public health. I'm also the president of the Youth Senate for the National Youth Parliament, which is under the Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Culture. I've had the wonderful opportunity to debate with my fellow youth senator Trey. We've also gone to the regional level. I've had the opportunity to represent the Bahamas in the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association's Regional Youth Parliament, and then we're in May now. So last month I had the opportunity to go to the United Nations to represent the Bahamas for the Permanent Forum for People of African Descent.
Nice. Yeah. So as you can see, our peoples are well qualified. It's happening. They doing things. Y'all ain't doing what they doing. Or you might be, and you might realize that one of the best representatives for whatever field or career or path you on is sitting right here in the seat to finally make your voice heard as well. So we gotta ask ourselves, like, how do we currently feel about the climate when it comes to voting, the systems when it comes to voting? How much does your vote really matter? Because I realize that's something it's a very common thing. People in the younger generation could be a bit bleak sometimes about the future because corruption ain't as easy to hide as it used to be. It really ain't. Like, we could see things for what it is, and so what y'all gonna do is kind of help us, me included, everyone, because I'm a part of this generation, to understand why this is important. So I prepared some questions. And the first one I want to ask, we could start with you, Tezel. I'm going to switch it up as we go through, but let's start with you, and everyone's going to answer this question. So democratic systems are often seen as top down, all right? Now, governments speak, citizens clap or complain, and that's how things typically go. Now, what we want to know is, how do we shift toward a genuine two-way dialogue between elected officials and the public? And what does that look like in practice?
That's a really good question. So, I think that the first thing that we can do to bridge that gap is one, definitely exercise your vote, and that's only the beginning. So, what you do after voting and the decision has been made, I think it's really important to follow up with your member of parliament through town hall meetings. If they're not facilitating it, I think you should demand it. But I know that on a frequent basis, they may have like a branch meeting. So I think it really calls for us to maybe move away so much from only wanting to support your party, and if they don't win, then you kind of disengage. I think we have to say, okay, the decision has been made. Uh, give your support or be willing to follow up, throughout their tenure to give the critique and say, how can we work to improve our constituency, our neighborhood, and then what are they doing and holding them accountable so that they really represent your choice in the House of Assembly as well.
Yeah, no, agreed, Trey.
So for me, every person in the country has an active duty to perform civically to give back to this country by casting their vote, regardless of who the party is, but it's more so of who the person is in your constituency that's doing for the community itself, right? To bridge that gap, because you have a voice in a democratic system, that's why you should go and actually cast that vote honestly. And like this, I would have mentioned, go to town hall meetings. You put that person in, state your claim, why is it that something isn't functioning, and become that asset within the community. Say, hey, listen, if this isn't functioning, here is my background. Here is how I can assist and say, hey, let me lend a hand in this particular area. For example, if I know that I'm actually great at marketing skills, right? And we have either persons coming in who need assistance in SBDC or wherever other platforms say, hey, I need assistance, of course, in marketing. Help the person out. Perfect example. I'm in the Nassau Village constituency area, and they have an after-school program where you have young individuals who come in there to need tutoring based on English language, mathematics, and the list goes on. I taught briefly English language at my mother's school. So what I do is I now offer my assistance in teaching English language or tutoring, of course, in that regard. That's how you can actually bridge the gap. And again, no matter who comes in, because you're an active citizen and because these things affect you, still be their voice and say, listen, I can now give my response, regardless of who's in, whether FNM, PLP, or COI, truth be told, and say, hey, listen, let me now render my assistance from start to finish because I'm a citizen and what I do now affects my community and my country at large.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to say in a perfect democracy, there would be a two-way discussion, but based on human limitations, I think that just doesn't exist. Multiple countries, not a uniquely Bahamian issue. Yeah. I'd like to double up on his encouragement for everybody to get out and vote. I have a common stance that my vote means nothing. And I think, just imagine if everybody thought that what the outcome would be. So you have to think a step further and come out and participate regardless. And to build on that as well, I think a part of the responsibility of agency here is on the perspective, or the citizens. So you should expect your minister to reach out and try to get everybody's voice heard, but you also have a responsibility to reach out and provide your voice. We got to put their feet to the fire and participate. So come out to events, participate, call people, find out who you need to talk to make your presence felt. Yeah.
Okay.
The last point I'll make, something I realized was really important in that conversation is making sure you engage with civil society organizations. I think they have a lot of expertise in their particular realm, and I think incorporating them also helps to have another level of accountability towards the government and your member of parliament as well.
Okay, so first of all y'all, I'm gonna expect the whole time, they're gonna give very insightful answers. These are educated Bahamian people, is what they do. They can't help themselves. I hope y'all listening and paying attention. So based on what y'all said so far just now, Kenrick, we'll start with you, right? Like we said, even to open this up, is sometimes people feel pessimistic about the value of their vote. That's one of the most popular things, especially with the youth, right? So with misinformation spreading constantly around the circumstances of voting, what are some critical thinking skills that you feel people, especially our young voters, need to have? And not just what those skills are, whose responsibility is it to teach them those skills?
A big part of my stance on life is that a person is just a combination of the circumstances. I think we more nurture than nature. That's just my opinion. So I honestly think that's a big issue here. People are limited to the people they've interacted with, the environment, what they hear, what they experience. So that's a tough one right now, because I think we have a big problem with people being so loyal to a party. It's hard to get them to hear, seeing their other views. So I think for one, we need to make it easy for you to consider other options And then hopefully through dialogue, talking to other people, everybody who realizes we shouldn't think this way, spread your opinion, more discourse, eventually people will loosen up. And to that avail, I think important discussion to be had is about beginning ranked voting systems in the Bahamas. So it's not like your vote could be wasted if you don't pick one of the two top parties.
I like that. So for me, I think here's the issue that we're having first and foremost. One, either you're a hardcore PLP, hardcore FNM, or now you're hardcore COI, or simply a voter just to know exactly who he or she should pick when it comes to the election time specifically, right? Either you're choosing because your family is a diehard PLP, your family is a diehard FNM, but the real question is, who are you deciding to vote for as an individual specifically, right? Not predicated based on who my family is or what they would have actually done or who they would have voted for specifically. When it comes down to critically thinking on an election, number one, especially if you're a first-time voter, right? What opportunities do you see based on the manifestos that would have been listed that can benefit you, number one, and of course the country's future at large, right? Number two, what factors play a role that can either possibly stop, of course, or even prevent, in a sense, opportunities and also growth, right? And of course, number three, how is this going to affect our three most important industries: tourism, banking, fishing, and farming, truth be told, as well as foreign direct investments and as well as foreign investments altogether, right? The average, of course, individual won't talk about these things because they don't either know about it or it doesn't pique their interest specifically, right? When we talk about entrepreneurship, how does it affect us as well too? So these are factors that we should consider and also think about when coming into an election itself. And of course, in the long run, our future is actually what matters to us. Does this align with the SDGs itself done by the UN? Will it, of course, end in the sense poverty, world hunger as well too, education reform? These are things that we should actually look at. And if we don't look at it, do some research behind it to see how it can actually affect us in the long run altogether.
So I guess I'll start from the last part of your question, which is who do we feel, or who would I feel would be responsible for cultivating this critical thinking? One, everything starts at home. So I think maybe part of the challenge and why that critical thinking isn't there and it's not being fostered in the home, I think capitalism. I don't know if you can say.
No, I agree.
First of all, you can say whatever you want, Tezel.
I agree, Tezel. It is capitalism.
Capitalism makes it kind of difficult for you to focus on family. So if we think about it, people aren't really spending as much time together, and so the conversations aren't able to be had because people are so divided. I think there are some other dynamics that play that cause brokenness in homes and whatnot. I think the other place that we could foster critical thinking would be through the education system. And I think there it's really important to maybe revamp the education system so that we're not talking about who to vote for, but really instill values on what kind of democracy and what kind of society we need to have. And I think once you create that enlightenment in the schools, really have a rich understanding of social studies, understanding what the Bahamas actually achieved leading up to independence since then, what were some of the challenges, and really being able to evaluate ourselves in a holistic way. Then you can see what are the gaps, what are the strengths, and then be able to spark the minds and say what are the opportunities that we can do to move forward. I think parties can also do a great job with assessing themselves more holistically and saying these are our strengths. However, these are the limitations that we had, and this is what we plan on doing to move forward. Right now, I think what we see is a lot of like blaming, and that's evidenced by the 5011 billboard. So I think the critical thinking starts from home, but there's also some self-assessment and holistic overview that we could give.
Yeah, no, y'all gave good answers, and then in addition to that too, like I feel that what happens is if you're not educated properly or you're not taught these critical thinking skills, then you don't even know when you're being exploited.
Yeah.
You can't tell that you're being deceived, and with people just choosing a team as though this is sports, and they're like, I don't care what happens, I'm a diehard this or I'm a diehard that. They don't realize how dangerous it is, because I think what happens is there's a certain ceiling as far as education goes sometimes, whether it's intentional for people to notice information or not. Regardless, there's a ceiling. Once people go beyond that ceiling, there are certain voters that are no longer in the conversation. They are not paying attention to what's going on covertly. And that brings me to my next question, and we could start with you, Trey. So the thing is, especially with us being younger and this conversation happening, we'll find that a lot of people in our demographic, we get our news and our information from social media,
Yeah.
from the internet. That's just the way it is. That's what we're used to. That's the language we speak, and that's the plane we exist on very often. And although you have older generations that are integrating and getting involved, they actually seem more willing to physically be present. So when we talk about like town hall meetings and actually meeting their representatives and stuff like that. And so my question is, with information being available through social media and pertinent information being available in real life, how do we properly bridge that gap so everyone is getting an equal amount of information?
I think, great question, by the way, to be honest, but I think that this takes us getting involved, honestly. Getting involved in various programs itself that would actually open up those pathways. For example, just as this, perfectly spoken, right? Young persons are here today because, again, either they're first-time voters or they're second-time voters itself, and so they want to experience exactly what is it now that I can expect in this election coming up, right? And of course, even when that party or the person is elected specifically, how can I now become involved in various activities? Perfect example. With the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, they have a vast amount of programs to actually be enlisted in to help you give your social responsibility as a youth of this country, and let your voice be heard specifically. Perfect example. Tezel and I are part of the National Youth Assembly, right? I'm a youth senator. She's, of course, the president of the Youth Senate itself. There's the Fresh Start program. There is the National Youth Guard, and the list goes on, right? We can name a few, right? And again, I'm not politically tied to anybody, but I'm just saying, if you want these to have that voice from a social media perspective, and also want to get to actually be a part of it physically, you have to get involved. That's just simply it. And if you decide just to sit back and say, man, listen, nothing is happening, for the country. They are doing nothing for the young people itself, and you're going based of things off of face value, right? There's an issue with that. You have no research, number one. You didn't get involved, number two. You are inactive in your communities itself, number three, and you're going based off of hearsay, right? What's your stance next? Are you going to sit there like a bump on a log, like my father-in-law would actually always say? Or are you going to get up and make something happen and shake for you specifically? And I think, and again, I'm not bashing the younger generation, no, right? But we've been known as the microwave generation for years now, right? It's the expectancy of us to say, hey, this thing is going to fall on my lap automatically, right? You want your voice to be heard. You want your voice to actually to be noticed, and yourself to be recognized. Put yourself in spaces where kings and queens and rulers of this earth are, to make your stance clear. And again, if there's no provision to do so, begin to have exposure. This is where, of course, the schools come in, right? Even though they have civics, of course, in the 10th grade. I remember, of course, going to high school, civics was actually only in the 10th grade, and they stop it. In grade 11 and 12, you have a chance to choose between geography, history, and religion, right? But in order to get us young folks as more involved in governance, socialism, more involved, and of course, in economic growth and sustainability, put these things back in schools. Help them to actually rebuild an interest in it, especially when it comes to our three main industries in the country itself. You want to get involved? Make yourself available. Become actionable towards your stance. And hey, place yourselves again in these rooms to make these things happen for you and your country at large.
Got you. Okay, let's go, Tezel.
I think I have mixed reviews. So I do agree that the older segment of youth, we have to recognize we are the adults now.
But that's so true.
So it's really important to be involved. So I'm on Bahamian Twitter. I see a lot of the
LOL.
discourse there.
Yeah.
You also see a lot on Facebook, and it varies with
Yeah.
depending on which platform you're on. So the discourse is happening, but I think it's really important to not only share online, but be able to either attend a town hall meeting and be aware of what's happening, or if there's a concern that you see and there's contact information for any of these organizations you have the issue with, be willing to reach out to them, even if it's privately. But what I would say is that the challenge I see in terms of youth engagement is that we may be invited in the space, we're not really given the access like that. So I can imagine that it's not all young people who are not involved. ORG is mostly
Young people.
facilitated by younger people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really brilliant. But what I would say is that ORG is like the utopia, right? There are some spaces here where you have a lot of young people who may work in an institution or they may be part of it, but they're not really given the access, the authority, they don't have the backing, there's limited funding. And so, and they're also not given the voice.
Yeah.
And if they express their voice, they may be reprimanded. So I think that's a conversation that you can't always only put it on young people to say you have to be involved. Yes, do that, but they also need to have their participation facilitated and supported as well. Because if not, then you're just going to be there and you're going to be disgruntled. And I think that's what you kind of see with younger people sitting out altogether because they don't feel like their presence is valued in terms of having equal decision making ability.
No, that's a fair point. So how would you build on that, Ken?
Yeah, like she said, I think the jury's still out on this for me personally. Like, yeah, I couldn't say what the perfect balance is for me. And if I was gonna answer this, I'd like to get maybe data from people saying what their opinions are.
Yeah.
But maybe an answer I could throw out would be based on demographics. Like, you could look at what percent of the population is before the age of more technology.
It's 35% of people in the Bahamas are 35 and under.
35 and
then
under.
57% are no 57% are 35 and younger, and then 35% are between the ages of 15 and 35.
Oh, okay. And everybody else is above. Okay, in that case, then sounds like we should definitely be more leading towards media and technology.
Yeah.
etc.
Correct.
Because otherwise, wasting resources. That sounds harsh to say, but you could throw a lot of events for people who may not be as able, for one, and who may not be as interested potentially. Yeah.
But to piggyback on what Tezel would have said as well too, I agree with your point as well. Truth be told, because again, in retrospect to what I would have said, is also true because we grew up in, of course, in an environment whereas, hey, because you're young, you don't have as much knowledge, number one, and you are just in a sense speaking based on what you would have seen. When in actuality, you have a lot of young people who have ideas, number one, and also who are interested in the country's development altogether, right? But again, if you come into a space, hey, shut up, be quiet, you can't speak now. It's not your turn. You're too young to do X, Y, and Z. And this is what we grew up doing. And what's so crazy is that the baby boomers, they grew up in a space whereas, hey, if you are in a room and you see, of course, adults talking, you got to be quiet. But in this generation now, we're not going to stand for that. Respectfully now, we're going to say, hey, listen, I have a point to prove. Hear me out. This is my response and my answer, right? But there's some folks who are still in a space whereas, hey, this is their belief, they will shut you down. Perfect example. I was in McDonald's literally the other day and I was getting breakfast for my wife and I. And I came off the line to go to the kiosk to actually order to make it much more smoother. And the guy asked me a question. He's much older, like in his 50s. Where you going? So I paused for a second and say, I ordered prior to whatever have you. Anyway, went on the line to go get my order, and I said, sir, I said, with all due respect, I said, what you did was very disrespectful. Who you talking to? I older than you. My son older than you. I said, sir, you don't know me yet.
Yeah.
I don't get to know how old your son is, to be honest, or who you are specifically. But what I do know is that what you did was disrespectful. And again, if you want respect, you must earn that, no matter the age bracket or age, of course, in that regard. But he doesn't see it that way. He saw it whereas, hey, you're younger than me,
Exactly.
I'm older than you. You don't have to say, be quiet and shut your mouth and just listen to what I have to say. It doesn't work. No.
Simply because of your age. And then one more before I get to the next. Tezel, you had something to add to that?
But just to actually answer the question, I do feel like it's important for us to utilize social media and harness its power. And you don't have to have really a super huge following. I think you just have to have strong conviction in your voice too. So let me use myself for an example. If there's like something you're just gruntled with, or you just want to share your experience and add education based on what you know, you can do that. So I participated in an advanced polling, and I just gave an overview of what my experience was. And as opposed to only focusing on my experience, I included who would be eligible to participate in that, so that could be an opportunity for education there. Talk about what some of the challenges were with like the experience, and then give actual recommendations, and then follow up, and then communicate with the PRD to say, hey, this is what I think you could do for the next time. So harnessing social media to share your experience, and then use research to give recommendations.
I got you, and I get it, and I like how Kenrick kind of just skipped to the point of, I mean, wait, so we the majority? We should go with, we should go with what we doing. Save money, save time, save resources. I love that, and I get that, but then even to speak to my own point, because if you guys aren't familiar, my name is Shad Fer, and I do a lot of things that have to do with performing and with entertaining, and it's several things you all said that, two things in particular. So one, yes, social media is powerful, it's insanely powerful, and you can reach a large amount of people for less resources, yes, even like how I hope we're gonna be doing right now. But as a performer, as an entertainer, I could tell you that some of the most loyal responders and fans and people that actually engage with you and allow your influence to mean something are the people you see and interact with in real life. Like, a lot of times people are so caught up in what's going on social media and what they saying on social media that they ain't touching enough grass. Like, they ain't realizing, like, you gotta get out and actually, there's a lot of power that comes with meeting people, because, for example, a lot of times people say, like, you only got 100 views on that video, but imagine if 100 of those people were right here in this room, the difference that makes. And so that's how I think about it, one. And then the second thing is, you mentioned that some people may have a small voice, but that's the interesting thing, is that a good example is, let's say I put out a song. That song gets 1,000 plays. Let's say that those 1,000 plays is the equivalent of about a penny. You get a penny, right? But then let's say I have 3 people and they actually really like the song. So they buy the song directly, or they purchase a ticket to see me live. Those people matter. So this real life interaction is still something that exists. Like, a lot of people are very comfortable living virtually. And so with that being said, we're gonna start with you, Kenrick, because I said all of this to segue to the fact that, remember, if you're just tuning in, this is a collaboration between ORG, the Organization for Responsible Governance, and the Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Culture. So these specific people are maybe a little more deeply involved in this than the average person, but it doesn't change the fact that y'all do stuff, and stuff that anyone has the opportunity to participate in. So there was a workshop that y'all gave that allowed people to engage with political campaigns. What do you feel was the most surprising or even challenging thing you encountered during it? And you feel like in any way it changed the way you look at voting or representation?
So challenging was definitely the time. I feel like I didn't get a chance to answer all the questions based on the length of speech, but it's just an issue all the time. Main takeaways, I'd say, I wanted to ask all of them why they picked the party they represent. are they just a member of a team? Because when you heard them talk about their backgrounds, it's like, this thing inspired me and I'm here. But now the PM who may have been leading at that time is no longer the place. And have those values necessarily been translated or kept going? That's one thing. And then I was curious as well that I wanted to know how important they were in their respective groups, because you could only expect somebody to answer what they have access to. So I was trying to gear my questions appropriately based on that. Yeah, generally, I don't think my stance has been changed much, but a few questions have not been answered, but I've been given more substance on them. Yeah.
For me,
Wait, what was that? What was that? Everyone saw that, right? What was inside?
no, I had to laugh because
get it.
again,
Yeah.
for me typically, so like Kendrick would have said as well too. I feel that I have a lot of burning questions, honestly, because again, as a young person, I want to know exactly what's your stance on various things, right? When it comes to education, when it comes to the economy as a whole, when it comes to entrepreneurship, when it comes to young people, what are your plans for the next generation altogether? Which is again my biggest platform, which I stand on in particular, right? Just like he said as well too, are you just going to be there because it's a job, because you chose the party because of your family, or exactly why you do what you do specifically, right? And then again, truthfully, one party in particular was just unprepared to answer questions in particular as to what we have to have going on. Can your party specifically lead a nation, right? In a space where how the climate is now specifically, right? And of course, one party didn't show up. So my stance is, hey, again, I'm nonpartisan, truth be told. And again, I'm not sure who I'm voting for, truthfully, but I am voting. I have registered. But again, I feel as if that, again, number one, bring more information. Number two, come more prepared. Number three, show up, especially if it's a room full of young people, right? Because we have concerns, we have queries, and we have questions that must be answered, right? And of course, number four, why you chose where you are now, and what's guiding your decision to stay with a particular party itself, and how is this going to be beneficial to you and the country at large.
Okay, so before you go, Tezel, just so y'all know, because based on what you two said just now, there's definitely a follow-up question that I think is important for all of y'all that hopefully even the older generation will appreciate, because we're going to need y'all answer on that. But first, I want you to answer this one.
I support both of what they said. Kenrick said something that was really, it was on my mind, and I'm glad that he said it, and I'm gonna say it here. I think that based on who you send and their level of preparation, that lets me know how much you care about young people's votes. So one, if you have someone who, if the person doesn't show up, your absence says a lot.
Yeah.
If you send someone and they're not well prepared, that reflects poorly on you, because you should want to make sure that the person who is here to represent your party is not only present, poise, all that stuff, but the substance, like they can be able to speak to the core values of the organization, what their principles are, what their policy stances are. That's really important, because if you want people to vote for you, you have to. And so by not showing up or not having your values clearly expressed, that's very evident. And so depending on the age of the young person, they could be very impressionable. Like you really have to make your mark in that moment.
Yes.
For myself, I have already voted. Today's experience makes me ask a lot more questions, but I'd be willing to share my experience with other people and say, not based off of this, but hey, this is what you should be looking for. One thing that really stood out to me that I appreciated was the tool that ORG developed as far as having the
table to ask certain questions, understand what everybody's stance is, and then encourage you to look for the sources that support it, either through the
Sorry
manifestos.
to cut you off. You all remember any of the questions y'all asked using the tool?
So someone asked a question. Questions that were asked had to do with the healthcare system,
Education as well.
education, as well as youth employment.
Sorry, I was gonna say two specific ones I had were about ranked voting that I mentioned before, and then separating maybe voting for the PM and your MP.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people feel conflicted in their decision based on that alone. Yeah.
And also, I also asked as well too. Does the manifesto that they have, does it align with the SDG goals as well too? The Sustainable Development Goals, of course, in particular. And I think for as us who are SIDS or small island development nations itself, we should actually be focused on these things. Again, it affects us all together. Truth be told.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I want to make sure you still get to finish your point, though. Did you say?
I kind of lost my train of thought, but I do.
You brought up the tool. I didn't
Yeah. So okay.
You're saying why
So
you
the
appreciated
tool,
it.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
appreciated that they even made it, that they shared it so that we have the exercise to go through, and you can say, oh, you have a proper way to compare each of the parties, and you identify the particular topics that are relevant to you or that you feel passionate about, so that you could ask substantial questions based on their response or based on the manifesto. You could make a clear decision. I do think we need to move away from voting for who your family went with or based off of what you feel, because you're ultimately you're voting for who is going to be making decisions on your behalf.
Yeah. This
So-
ain't a sports team.
Yeah.
You decide in the next 5 years of your country's future.
And a lot changes in
A
5
lot.
years.
Because I think people underestimate just in 5 years, the kids that were 10 are now 15. Kids that never existed, that weren't born,
here.
are now 5. And between just the age of 20 and 25, a lot could change about how you feel. And so,
Your brain.
exactly.
At 25. So
Exactly.
yeah.
So now you just
And I'll be 36 in
officially
5 years.
using your brain, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? Even piggybacking on that, because I think when y'all talk about who parties send to represent them to speak to the youth, I still think there's a level of underestimation. Because
agree.
remember, we spoke about that potential ceiling with education. You have a lot of people that are smart enough to know how to gain power. They're smart enough to know how to gain capital. But because they're so smart at those things, they underestimate the people that are,
The humanistic side of it.
yeah, exactly, people that want to know certain things that have nothing to do with just power and money. And people who can't be persuaded simply with like a bribe or a job. They really want to know the nitty gritty of what's going on. And so that's what brings me to my next question. And we could start with you, Tezel, because because y'all mentioned the questions y'all use the voters tool to ask. And while we on that, just in case you're watching at home, once again, you could go to orgbahamas.com/vote and you could get a bunch of information on how to select your voting decisions, like how to make them wisely. It's not going to tell you who to vote for, but it'll tell you how you may want to think when it comes to voting, because as they've pointed out, there are things you consider sometimes in hindsight where it's like, this gave me a lot of insight. So I got a couple more questions, but one of the most important ones that I think each of y'all are gonna have, some interesting answers on, right? Which national issues matter to you the most as a young person? A, and what are ways you truly feel that the government or the community could engage you more when it comes to these issues? Now,
Me personally?
yeah, and I know this a topic that's about to explode, so do your best to try to make sure you communicate what you want to say, because I don't want to make you, like Kenrick said, sometimes the limitation is how long y'all could speak, and even though we do have like 2 minutes or whatever, still make sure you say what you want to say. All right, so let's hear it.
Okay, so the 3 topics that are the most critical for me are employment, and basically opportunities for entrepreneurship, healthcare, and the environment. So I'll start with the environment. We are a small island development state that's surrounded by water. We have a lot of growing conversation around being climate activists and advocates as well. However, what you see on the ground every day, there's a conflict. Um, our biodiversity is being lost because of the fact that poor human stewardship, for the sake of development, we're losing our biodiversity, we're destroying it, and then that makes us more vulnerable to issues like hurricanes, sea level rise, so on and so forth. Not just because health, and I'll switch to health, not just because it's my background, but if you do not have a healthy people, the country will not be able to thrive. So if our healthcare system is weakened, and there's not a, let me see how I want to. The talk and the actions are not lining up to say that you are going to strengthen healthcare systems. In addition to the environment, the food environments they're not conducive to our people being able to thrive. And so I do think we need to really critically understand what's happening. Our people are getting sicker. Our healthcare facilities we don't have the capacity to care for them. And then youth employment. A young lady expressed something that I think most of us, all of us in this room have said, whether we said it out loud or we said it in closed spaces, there's this gap where you get the education that's necessary, whether through tertiary universities or if you go to a trade school. There's a gap where there's money that's invested, that there's knowledge that's learned, but you aren't able to quickly be able to find opportunities. And I've seen firsthand what that could do. And ultimately, that's what led me to start my business. There was a gap where for a while I couldn't find opportunities, and then things worked out for me with working through various NGOs. But I think those three things are most critical: employment and entrepreneurship opportunities, health system strengthening, and our environment. And I think if we don't address those very critically, we're going to see sick people, physically and mentally, who are most likely going to become climate refugees, and people who are in despair because they don't have job opportunities to maintain their health and well-being.
No, that's serious, very serious. So let's hear it. So y'all remember the question, right? The specific issues that y'all care about and how y'all feel that the government and community is engaged.
Thought I forgot to answer.
That was the first part. but no. So one, I'll let you answer. But two, you definitely made the points of what you care about. But with the part how you feel it's being engaged with.
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear it.
So you guys can work with Regal State of Health Consultancy for support with project management, data analytics, monitoring and evaluation if you already have a program, policy development. So these are the things that I can do and that you can engage me on personally to help address those
Could you
issues.
say it one more time in case?
The name of the business is Regal State of Health Consultancy. The website is regalstateofhealth.com, and my portfolio is there with past works that I've done and my portfolio and products as well.
All right, awesome. So now then, let's hear from you, Trey. So
Proud of you, Tezel.
your issues that you feel are most important to you, and either how or whether the government or even just the community in general is engaging with these things.
Wow. Love the question as well. So for me, it's always housing and urban development. That's the first thing. Youth employment as well. And also, three, advocacy for entrepreneurs, youth entrepreneurs as well as women in our country altogether. So let's start off with housing itself. We know for a fact to obtain a house in this society is a lot. It's expensive, right? From the closing costs to real property tax to simply even having the down payment specifically for the overall sale price of the home, right? If you, let's say, go to wherever housing person is, whether it's through a realtor, and of course through other platforms as well too, the usual down payment can be between 5 to 20%, and a house at average cost can be about $225,000. You do 20% on that amount. I didn't use my calculator. I don't know what it is now. However, the average person don't have $1,000 in savings in their account in the Bahamas. That's just truth, right? The question is now, how can you save towards the down payment for a house if things are so costly, right? The salaries aren't going up, number one. And of course, the factors that play a role, right? You have, of course, your utility bills, you have school fees, possible loans as well, to which you would have taken out due to certain circumstances that came into your life, whether it's leisure or for medical funding or even for schooling to get yourself in the position where you need to be. That's the first thing. Secondly, youth employment itself. I believe that various systems that we do have in government are antiquated automatically, right? So, for example, I think I went onto the job portal recently, just I guess to analyze it itself. There's no filter process, whereas you can say, hey, I can choose between construction, I can choose between administration, I can choose between whatever it may be specifically to narrow it and say, these are my specificities, these are what I know for a fact that I'm qualified for or what I'm good at specifically. Let me choose this job, right? After the process, what happens next? Do they contact the employer? Number one, is your resume now being filtered from this government system itself into the private, of course, entities as well? And this leads me to this as well. We need to build PPPs, public-private partnerships, right? What does this look like? The government itself or government agencies partner with various private firms to say, listen, I have this particular student, he or she just came back from the US or from wherever else for schooling purposes. This is their background. They have no experience as yet. You have some jobs to say, hey, listen, you need 10 years experience, but an associate's degree in whatever the area it is. It has to make sense. It has to line up, right? 2 years ago, to my last point, I would have done some research for UNESCO, and which is, of course, under the UN itself. And I was a youth as a researcher. What this does is this has us to do research itself on youth and also women-led entrepreneurship in the Bahamas itself, right? And we went off from the people's perspective. And the reason why, at that time, while I was doing it, their stance was, the reason why it's hard for them to go into entrepreneurship is because, number one, no accessibility to funding. Number two, trying to figure out the climate itself as to what to do. Everyone's doing the exact same thing. There's hair, nails, makeup, food, whatever it may be specifically, right? How do I get there? And number three, how do I have access to have these tools to say, hey, let me now enlist myself into a space where I can grow my business, grow myself all together, right? So last point as well, for me, I'm now realizing that a woman's health in this country is something that people don't talk about specifically. And I'll mention again, because I would have went to the fertility conference for the past 3 years in a row, women itself are being affected by cervical cancer, number one, which is the highest killer now in women in the Bahamas.
Which is preventable.
Which is preventable, correct. Cervical cancer, number one. Number two, the environment around them as well, and even sometimes their own partners, right? And again, this even leads to infertility in the Bahamas. You wonder why, of course, the authentic Bahamian is no longer being produced, is because of this is part of the reason. There is a decline in the Bahamian populace, truth be told, right? We need more people to sustain the economy as time goes on. Because guess what? Every day someone dies, someone should be being birthed. But because now the focus now shifted on, hey, my career, because I can no longer sustain myself in an economy where inflation goes up every year by 2%, let's make it make sense. So last I checked, based on stats, it takes about $2 million to raise a child from 0 to 18. You got it in your account? I know I don't right now. But $2 million just to raise one child from 0 to 18, $2 million. And this was actually shown about 2 or 3 years ago. So imagine now what it is.
Yeah.
So let's be realistic.
No, so
So my stance on another doing it. Some ways, of course, are now being shifted to do it, but I think it takes more involvement, more conversations, and of course, more action behind it, and truthfully hiring skillful individuals to work in government agencies, right? And having organizations realize, not because I'm young and don't have the experience, but I can learn.
Yeah.
Teach me, let me have use my acquired knowledge, in which I got from tertiary education, and put it into application. You can have knowledge, but applied knowledge is even better than just having knowledge.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. And all these are strong points. And see, this is exactly why I wanted to ask this question. And so we'll finish things off with hearing you, Kenrick, because it was you saying that you felt like you had things to say that you didn't get to finish saying. So I feel like this is the most important question to
It
ask.
is,
That's why I
yeah.
wanted to.
He said no.
I'm happy.
Ask.
It was interesting to hear you mention the cost of raising a child, because I find myself asking my coworkers who have families that all the time, because doing your own research, you could come up with so many different numbers, right? The reality is kind of a bit confusing. But I'd start by saying my first main issue with the size of the country is probably the freedom of information. And I'd admit that I haven't explored that to the full depth, so I don't know what the limits are. But I think if we had full reign of all the ongoings, then everybody could put their feet to the fire, so to speak, more often.
And more
and there'd
accountability.
be more
That's so
stats, more
true.
analytics we could do to figure out how we should improve, what's most pressing, etc.
Correct.
Yeah. I kind of directed these towards specific parties, and I wanted to stay away from that because, we speaking in general. So
Yeah.
let's see what I can do based on that. Yeah. So yeah, important thing for me was figuring out where they'd like to take the country if they were to win the next few elections rather than just this one. Because I think the switching back from party to party, although it's important to let the people's voice be heard, it interrupts a journey. And I've heard of that being a thing between multiple countries where if you can't have a 10-year plan to fix agriculture because two parties have different opinions, every time one party gets knocked out, starting from scratch again. Yeah. Other than that, I notice a lot of them are kind of providing ideas that this is what we're going to do. But due to me not knowing the depth of information that's public, I'm wondering how fleshed out are these ideas? Are you just insinuating? You just dropping this idea, we can figure out the details later. I also think it'd be a beautiful thing if instead of this campaigning process where you say your ideas and we vote based on them, there could be more of a contract process. You write a contract to the people saying, these are things I'm going to get done in this time, and if you don't, there's a reasonable reprimand, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? And apparently there's a type of government that exists like that. Yeah, so it'd make it less of a worry if they're going to actually achieve what they're asking. It's more of an expectation. Yeah.
Oh, I got you. So, and I see you have a point to add to that. So, you could get that point out the way, but I also too want y'all to be prepared now that y'all put out those questions, because you had mentioned your platform and stuff. So that's what we'll end it with at some point too. In fact, we could end it with that. So as you make your point, also let people know exactly how. If you're the person they could ask about these things, or if you implementing a change on the ground, on the front lines, they may want to find y'all. So make your point and then let them know how they could find you.
Just one point to support what Kenrick said. I really would like to see at some point all political parties come to have this bipartisan agreement to support the National Youth Development Plan. So there's one, I think it's called Vision 2040. And I think that instead of having their own ideas, you should think about what the country needs. Come to the table and say, this is what the country needs to move forward. This is where we are now. These are the challenges. Regardless of who is in office, these objectives need to be met. Based on how you perform, you will either be able to continue on, because now you have and the plan is actually already made. So based on how well you work towards that, you can continue on, or you'll be voted out. But then there's accountability. There's a lot of accountability mechanisms that we need, because I'm also nonpartisan. I think as a young person who is inheriting a lot of things that I wasn't here to create in the first place, and they are not going to be around to feel the full brunt, is very concerning. And so there's a subset of young people who aren't voting because they feel like it doesn't matter. Their vote actually matters, which is why people are going after them to get the vote. What I think needs to happen now is, everybody come to the table and say, this is what we are working towards, and like you are able to be judged on that.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing point too, because that's another thing that's worth mentioning is that a lot of people are bleak because they feel like once the government changes, whatever the other one did, it now starts all the way back from a certain point. Things get swept out, and so that for all of them to agree to, just be bipartisan on certain things, like that's absolutely essential. So now the most important part, and just to go over things once again, all this information you have gotten is not just limited to this feed you're looking at all. It's available. You just go to orgbahamas.com/vote. You can find out more information, but now to add to that, you can find out how to specifically, if not reach these people directly, whatever y'all care about and the platforms y'all feel like people should know about in order to find y'all. Now is the time. So we could start with you and work our way down.
Okay, so I've already shared information about my business. So Trei and I are part of the National Youth Assembly, which is the youth parliament structure that has a 2-year term. And so that is NYA Bahamas on most platforms, which include Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. There's a Twitter page. There's also LinkedIn. So for LinkedIn, it's National Youth Assembly Bahamas. The application for that is on my gateway, and I believe they will launch the applications sometime during the summer to be sworn in during Youth Month in October.
All right. And then Trey?
So my closing view is this: go there and vote on May 12th. Cast your vote, typically, and because it's your civic duty to do so. And I'll say, lead to where your heart is asking you to vote, right? And know it's actually better for the country altogether at large. Not because your family, not because you see things happening in social media, no. But if you feel as if this person deserves a chance, give them that chance specifically. That's my stance on that. And like this, I would have said, my name is Trei Bethel again, Youth Senator for the National Youth Assemblies here in the Bahamas, under the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, and the direction of Ms. Sandina Neely as well, as Director of Youth specifically. Again, I'm a business development / marketing specialist and entrepreneur as well. You can find me on TikTok as Trey_B, Instagram is T_B, and of course on Facebook is Trei Bethel, and also LinkedIn is also Trei Bethel as well. So if you need advice on these platforms, my platform of course is youth development, education is also as well as if you need simply, of course, assistance with your business, I'm that guy, and you can seek after us as well too, in this regard, and also information about voting process as well too. So yeah.
All right. Okay.
And I'll say, I moved back to the Bahamas about a year ago, and finding new circles to get involved with, to have conversations I deem interesting, so to speak. And sometimes there may be a bit of a struggle. So to that avail, I just wanted to mention, I'm a member of this thing called the Dink Society. We play pickleball on Sundays, 6 to 8. So cool. Yeah, so if you're looking for interesting conversation and some fun, come out. Yeah. That's me.
You're just gonna tell me to ding you?
Yeah, pickleball, I should have added. Yeah, it's
where can I find you though?
Oh yeah, you can find it on Instagram, the Dink Society. You find it in the information you there. Very responsive, so reach out.
All right, man.
I saw it recently, by the way.
No, that sounds great. And this is yet another example of the conversations that people are asking for and the moments that people say we need and that we want. This is an example of it happening. Once again, my name is Shad Fer. You'll see me again just doing random things as a proud, happy Bahamian. And then also, too, one of the best parts about being me is I have the fortune of being able to meet fellow amazing, intelligent Bahamians such as y'all. So it's really been a privilege and an honor to have this conversation, because a lot of people seem to underestimate the fact that we could have these conversations and that they could make progress. So thank you so much for showing up. And remember, guys, I'll say it one more time. I'm sure you got it at this point. All you do is go to orgbahamas.com/vote and you could get more information. But this has been an event that was a collaboration between the Organization for Responsible Governance and the Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Culture. Thank you so much for tuning in, and y'all enjoy the rest of your day. And May 12th, y'all get out there and y'all vote, okay?